His empire was crashing, and no one knew it but him. In a five-star restaurant filled with laughter and lies, billionaire James Callahan sat one call away from losing everything. But across the room, a waitress with a secret wasn't here to serve. She was here to settle a debt. And with one sentence, she'd change his life forever. Don't blink. This drama is just getting started. The clink of glasses, the low hum of laughter, and the warm gold glow of chandeliers wrapped the restaurant in a soft illusion of comfort. But in the far corner, beneath the subtle flicker of candlelight, James Callahan looked anything but comfortable. He sat alone, elbows resting on the edge of a crisp white tablecloth, eyes locked on a screen glowing faintly in his palm. The phone was silent now, but the last message still lingered. Callahan Holdings downgraded. Effective immediately. His jaw tightened. He pressed the screen off and slid the phone face down on the table, as if hiding it would make the truth disappear. A waiter approached, placing a folded linen napkin to his left. Still waiting on someone, sir? James glanced up, startled. No, he replied. His voice was smooth but hollow. Just me tonight. The waiter nodded politely, but James caught the flicker in his eyes, the recognition. The same look he'd been getting all day. Half curiosity, half pity, maybe even a little delight. He was the billionaire everyone whispered about today. And tomorrow, they'd do more than whisper. James leaned back in his seat, letting out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. His reflection wavered in the red wine sitting untouched in front of him. The suit he wore cost more than some people's yearly rent. But no amount of tailoring could hide the way he was unraveling. Then she walked by. Emily, early 30s, tied her black apron a little tighter as she passed. Hair pulled into a loose ponytail. No makeup, no pretense. Just steady eyes and quiet grace. She glanced at James, but not with the hunger or awe that most people gave him. Just a pause, as if trying to remember something. She didn't say a word. Not yet. James noticed. Not the glance, but the lack of one. No hello. No sir. No soft flattery. And for some reason, that stung more than it should have. He rubbed the back of his neck, trying to shake it off. He'd been powerful long enough to get used to being invisible in only two ways, when people feared him or when they wanted something. This was different. Emily returned a moment later, this time holding a small plate of bread and butter. Her movements were effortless, practiced, but not robotic. She placed it down without breaking eye contact. Let me know if you need anything else, she said gently. James raised an eyebrow. No guessing the wine? No, how's the market treating you tonight, Mr. Callahan? A faint smile tugged at her lips, but didn't quite land. I figure you've had enough people pretending to care. She turned and walked off before he could reply. James blinked. For the first time all day, someone's words didn't feel rehearsed. And for reasons he didn't understand yet. They stung the most. James stared into the wine again, watching the surface ripple as he tapped the base of the glass. A low murmur of business talk floated from nearby tables, quarterlies, investors, growth projections, all the language he used to live and breathe. But tonight, it felt like another world. He checked his phone. Nothing. No missed calls. No texts. Just silence. He sighed and leaned back, fingers drumming against the edge of the table. The weight of the past 24 hours pressed down on his chest. This restaurant, once his go-to for closing million-dollar deals, now felt like the last place he could hide from the headlines. Then Emily returned. This time, she didn't come with food or fanfare, just a fresh glass of water and a presence that somehow calmed the noise around him. You okay? She asked, her voice soft but clear. James chuckled dryly. What gave it away? The fact that I'm drinking wine like it's mouthwash, or that I'm sitting alone in a restaurant I used to own shares in. Emily raised an eyebrow. Used to? James nodded. Markets shifting. Turns out the ladder's slippery when you're on top. There was a pause, not awkward, just quiet. Thoughtful. Emily glanced down, then back at him. Ladders are funny like that. They never warn you when they're about to break. That landed deeper than it should have. He looked at her again. Something about her voice, the way she said it, like she'd been there before. You seem too young to be giving life advice, he said, half teasing. Emily smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You'd be surprised what life hands you when you're not rich enough to stop it. James studied her for a beat. The suit, the money, the power, none of it meant much in this moment. She wasn't impressed, not fazed. She saw him, not the title. And for the first time in days, he didn't feel like a headline. He cleared his throat. You from around here? Emily nodded. Born a few blocks over. My family used to run a little shop. Hardware, actually. James raised his glass, trying to focus on her words, but a thread of unease pulled at his thoughts. Used to, he echoed. Yeah, she said casually, almost too casually. Big investment group bought up the block a few years back. Raised rent. We had to close. My dad never really got back on his feet after that. James didn't say anything. He just sipped his wine slower now. Something about that story felt familiar. Too familiar. Emily smiled, polite, professional, but walked away before he could ask more. Alone again, James stared at his reflection in the wine glass. The distortion shimmered. For a brief moment, he saw a ghost looking back. The room buzzed around him, crystal glasses clinking, silverware tapping against porcelain, soft jazz humming beneath it all. But for James, it all sounded far away. He scrolled through a string of unread messages. Legal recommends full withdrawal. Stakeholders requesting a statement by morning. SEC inquiry confirmed. His hands, steady all his life, now trembled ever so slightly. He clenched them into fists on the table, forcing himself to breathe. Across the room, Emily wiped down a counter. She glanced over once, quick, subtle, but the look stayed with her. She remembered when her father got news like that, when his hands started to shake, when no one at the bank would meet his eyes. Back at James's table, the waiter returned. Would you like to order, Mr. Callahan? James barely heard him. I'm sorry. I'm not sure I'm staying much longer. The waiter hesitated, then nodded and stepped away. Emily saw the interaction. She walked over, casual but curious. I get it, she said. Some nights you just don't want to eat alone. He looked up, surprised by her tone. Not pity, not sympathy, just understanding. James ran a hand down his face. Do I look that pathetic? No, she said. You look like someone who's spent too much time pretending not to be. He let out a small laugh. Real this time. That obvious? To someone who's done the same? Yeah. He stared at her a moment, longer this time. Her eyes didn't flinch. What's your name? He asked. Emily. Emily, he repeated, testing it out. I don't know what it is, but you don't talk like a waitress. And you don't sulk like a billionaire, she said with a smirk. He smiled. Then, after a beat, he asked, You said your dad lost his shop. What happened after? Emily shrugged. He tried to start over. But some things, once they break, they don't come back the same. James looked down at the glass again, turning it slowly between his fingers. I've broken a lot of things, he said quietly. Never thought I'd be one of them. Emily didn't answer. Not right away. Instead, she refilled his water, then leaned in just slightly. You'd be surprised what survives the fall, if it lands in the right place. Then she walked away. James sat back, stunned by how much that sentence hit. He didn't know it yet, but that was the first crack in the wall he'd built around himself. And tonight, the whole thing was about to come down. A buzz broke the silence. James's phone lit up. We have an offer. His heart jumped, too fast for a man who used to control the fate of 10 companies with a nod. He answered, trying to keep his voice steady. Talk to me. His lawyer's voice came through, clipped and anxious. It's from Lorenz Holdings. Emergency bridge deal. They'll float you through the next quarter, but you'll lose controlling shares. You'll be a figurehead. James's breath caught. The deal was oxygen, poisoned with humiliation. I built this company, he muttered. With nothing. You'll lose it all, James. This is the only rope left. He didn't answer. He ended the call. Emily returned to clear the plate he never touched. You look like someone who just swallowed a grenade, she said, half joking. James smirked, barely. You ever get offered a life raft that comes with a collar? Emily paused. So sell or sink? More like vanish, he replied. They'd keep the name on the door, but strip the man behind it. Emily's eyes softened. And that matters to you? James blinked. Doesn't it to everyone? She tilted her head. Not when the name's already lost meaning. That stopped him cold. Something about how she said it, like she knew. His voice dropped. You're not just a waitress, are you? Emily smiled. I'm whatever the day needs me to be. She started to walk away, but James leaned forward. You know, most people would kill to see someone like me fall. Emily turned back, her voice quiet. I used to think that too. For a moment, neither spoke. The sounds of laughter and music carried on around them, oblivious. James stared at her, something shifting in his eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or the ache of understanding something too late. Then he asked, did I hurt someone you knew? Emily didn't answer. Not with words. Just a look. One that said yes. And it still matters. But this moment isn't about revenge. She turned away, and for the first time that night, James Callahan felt truly, painfully seen. James sat there, alone in a sea of candlelight and murmured privilege, as the final message came in. Loren's holdings rescinded. Public exposure risk. We're out. He read it twice. The words blurred. That was it. The last offer, the last illusion of control gone. His name would be in ruins by morning. He closed his eyes, sinking deeper into the leather seat like it could shield him from what was coming. For a man who once measured his worth in numbers and power, he now had nothing left but silence. And then, a soft voice broke through the fog. You asked earlier, Emily said, standing beside him, if you hurt someone I knew. He turned, slowly. Her eyes met his. Steady, honest. I wasn't just a girl from the block, she said. My dad's store was my life too. James's face froze. I was 16 when it happened. You bought up the land, pushed the rent until we couldn't breathe. The shop folded in 6 months. My dad never forgave himself. She paused. He drank himself into the hospital that year. James's lips parted slightly, but no words came. I watched him break, she continued. Not because of you alone, but because of everything you represented. Profit over people. Expansion over community. I didn't know, James whispered, voice cracking. I know you didn't, she replied. That's the worst part. You never had to. A silence fell between them. Thick, heavy, true. There was no anger in her voice now. Just the weight of memory. He swallowed hard. Why are you even talking to me? Emily looked at him for a long time. Then she said, because you look like a man who's finally ready to listen. James lowered his eyes, and for the first time in years, he didn't try to defend himself, didn't argue, didn't posture. He simply nodded, softly, shamefully, honestly, and something in him shifted. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. The hum of conversation, the clinking of cutlery, the lazy jazz floating from the speakers, it all felt distant now. Muted, James sat hunched forward, elbows on the table, fingers laced together like a man holding himself together by habit. His voice was barely above a whisper. I don't even know who I am without all this. Emily leaned slightly closer, but said nothing. My son stopped talking to me 3 years ago, James went on. Said I cared more about the company than I did about him. And I did. I told myself I was doing it for the future for him. He paused. But maybe I was just chasing a legacy, because I didn't know how to be a father. Emily's expression softened. She didn't interrupt. She let the silence hold. I always thought I'd fix it later, he added. Once the business was stable. Once I had time. But later just kept moving. A breath escaped her lips, quiet, steady. And then she looked him in the eye and said the words that would haunt him forever. You still have time to be someone your son is proud of. It landed like a stone in his chest. James blinked but couldn't speak. His throat tightened. His lips parted, then shut again. That sentence, so simple, so human, hit deeper than any boardroom betrayal ever had. It wasn't judgment. It was mercy. A path forward if he was willing to take it. Emily didn't linger. She stood straight, offered a small nod, and walked away. No dramatic exit. No need for one. Behind her, James sat perfectly still, replaying her words again and again. You still have time. His hand moved, almost instinctively, reaching for his phone. But this time, not for his broker. Not for damage control. He scrolled through his contacts, stopped at one name, Ethan Sell. He hadn't dialed it in years, but now, his thumb hovered, then pressed call. The phone rang once, twice. James held his breath, heart pounding harder than it ever had in any negotiation. Click. Hello. A familiar voice. Cautious. Cold. Ethan, James said softly, barely able to believe he'd finally spoken his son's name out loud. It's me. A pause. Silence thick with years of disappointment. Why now? James swallowed. The lump in his throat refused to budge. Because I'm finally listening. And because I don't want to lose you too. His voice cracked on the last word. More silence. But this time not empty. Just unsure. Then, I'm not saying this fixes everything, Ethan replied. I know, James said quickly. I don't expect it to. But another pause. A softer breath on the other end. Maybe we can talk. That was all James needed. A door wasn't thrown open, but it wasn't locked anymore. Outside the restaurant, Emily untied her apron and stepped into the cool night air. Her shift was over. The streetlights bathed the sidewalk in soft gold. She didn't look back. But behind her, through the tall glass windows, James Callahan sat at the same table alone, but not lost. Not anymore. His shoulders weren't slumped. His hands were still. In front of him sat an empty glass, a cold plate, and a future no longer defined by what he had lost, but by what he might still rebuild. Because sometimes the right sentence at the right time doesn't just save a billionaire. It saves the man inside him. And all it takes is someone brave enough to speak it.